when I was thinking about when I saw those movies, I would have this kind of stress, and afterwards there'd be this relief, this kind
Yeah.
of euphoria. And I think that was the dopamine effect.
Hmm.
And not only are you getting this knowledge from this movie, but you're getting this hit.
Hi, I'm Lori.
And I'm Kevin, and this is No Longer Ashamed.
We are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
And we're here to share with you that if you're a survivor, you don't have to be alone.
Our logo is a salamander, and the reason is a fire salamander can survive a fire, and you have survived a fire.
We want to help you with your journey to healing and hope.
We are all survivors together, and we walk this journey together, and you are not alone.
By telling our stories, we are hoping that you will have the courage to share your stories as well and find your voice.
Because stories are so important, and for so long I know that I wouldn't tell my story, but when I finally shared my story, that's when I got my freedom.
And this is our journey and your journey to healing and hope. So come with us.
Was listening to Hidden Brain, and actually, the first episode is the one I wanted to talk about originally, but the second episode that I listened to today was a repeat of one he's done, and they kind of, in a way, went together, but in a real odd way in my head. But it was almost like I heard the first one a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to talk about, and then when I heard the second one, it hit an angle that I hadn't thought of before, and it made me think about both of them in a different way as like they coincided. So the first one, it's called Murder Mystery, and it's
Oh, I
about
remember seeing that. I was going to listen and I haven't yet.
oh, it's really good because it talks about morbid curiosity. And it really struck me because I've always had a morbid curiosity and I've always had kind of a morbid sense of humor sometimes. And I like things that are morbid and weird. And Charnel doesn't always like it. She likes some of it, but not all of it. But it reminded me of how you're also fascinated by true crime and the true crime podcasts. I mean,
Yeah.
hardcore. And in a way, I've always felt a little deviant because of it. And this goes back to when I was young, real little kid. I loved Halloween. I loved monster movies. I loved all the things that were scary back then. And they weren't that scary, but they were scary enough. And it continued all through my life. And in this episode called Murder Mystery, he talks to the author, or he's actually a psychologist, Colton Scrivener, and he's
Oh.
written a book about it. He talks about how humans have this morbid curiosity, but there's kind of a reason for it. And he talks about how animals also have this same kind of curiosity. And it's been noted for a long time, even by Darwin noted it when he did an experiment with apes. He put a dangerous snake in a bag in a cage with apes, and he watched how they reacted. And the first, the bravest ape would go up and look inside and then scream and run away. And the reaction was not to all just stay away, but they all had to go
Oh,
one
look.
by one and look at it and then scream and run away. And the author Colton talks about how prey animals do this. They have this curiosity about their predators. Like if they're out in the range and they see a predator from a distance, if it's a safe distance, they'll stop and study it, especially the younger ones, the ones that are not really young, but like the adolescents, and they'll study it from a distance rather than run away. And he talks about how that's evolutionary, that's kind of important for them because if they had to run every time there was a predator around, they'd use up a lot of energy, and they'd never be able to sit still and all this stuff, and how it's healthy for them to be able to study them from a distance and learn about them. And it relates to how humans do that, but we do that in a different way because we can tell stories and we can use our language. And so our curiosity is satisfied in a safe way. We don't actually have to put ourselves in danger to learn about the danger, to study it, to understand it. And it talked about how people who have gone through something traumatic tend to be drawn to, they did a study with people who, there was like a murder in a university, and they studied the students afterwards, and they did this thing where they offered them different movies they can go watch as a basically reward for going through the study. And so they offered them these movies they can go see for free, and they often would go to the scary movie rather than the movie that was funny or, a romantic movie or something like that. They were drawn to the scary movies.
Interesting.
And what he relates it to is that we're using this as a way of experiencing something dangerous in a safe way. And that's why we
Oh,
tell these stories, and that's why we are living kind of, what's the word?
vicariously.
Vicariously, yes. And experiencing these events without actually going through the danger.
That's interesting.
And I always had this kind of, I was drawn to scary kind of movies, but not always the real graphic ones. And he also talks about in this episode how we look at people who like these kinds of movies, what we think about these people who are drawn to horror, and how we think they must be horrible people themselves or have no empathy, where it's actually in many ways, in many cases, the opposite. The people who are empathetic, people who want to understand what people go through, are drawn to these movies. And in my case, when I heard this episode, I thought about, well, I'm not always drawn to it because I'm empathizing. It's in a way, it's like, well, it is, because in a way, I feel like I've been through hard things. So I get it. I understand what it's like to go through these things. So in a way, I'm not re-experiencing them, but I'm understanding them in a different way.
Wow, that's interesting. And I never made that connection, but I will tell you, I remember when my kids were little, before I broke a relationship with my parents, my mom left a box on my porch of all my pictures, like of me, that were on her wall,
Oh.
like my graduation picture and all these pictures. And under it was boxes and boxes of books about serial killers.
Huh.
And my husband was freaked out. I was kind of freaked out. I'm like, is this what you do when your kids grow up? You give them all the pictures off your wall. You get, like, it just seemed like she was done with me or something. I don't know. And
Huh.
she has mental challenges, but also she'd been through severe trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were those books hers?
Yeah, they were hers. She read them all.
And so she gave them to you thinking you'd like them, or?
Yeah, and I didn't at that time. I mean, but now I love true crime podcasts. So,
Well, I was gonna say, it's funny. Was that what got you into true crime, or when
yeah,
did that kind of start happening?
it's funny because I didn't like scary movies.
Mm-hmm.
And when my kids graduated, I was living with my sister and we loved Dexter.
Oh, you're kidding.
Loved it. But then when I left their house and got my own apartment, I couldn't watch it by myself.
Oh,
So,
and
but I'm
that's
not like afraid. Like I've lived alone for years. I've very, very rarely been afraid. So
uh-huh,
it's not that, but I also don't want to watch something really scary when I'm by myself.
uh-huh.
But something about the true crime, I think, I don't know what it is. And it's always real. It's not made up true.
Yeah.
But I do love cozy murders, mysteries.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
The gentle or
Yeah.
rom-comish. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. And part of what I was thinking when you were talking is there's kind of that solving it where the bad guy gets it in the end. And I love that.
Yeah, there's like this surviving it, getting through it. Because even in most of the horror movies, I don't watch a lot of horror movies. I like a lot of the sci-fi movies that are considered kind of hardcore, like Alien and Aliens. Those are two of my favorite movies
Don't watch
ever.
Alien when you're pregnant. That's all I
Oh,
have to say.
yeah, that would be a bad idea. And in a way, it's like it's a survival story. And
Mhm.
I also like a lot of war movies, as
Mm,
Charnel could attest to. And
mhm.
it's also like you're viewing it from the point of the survivor, the
Yeah.
person that gets through these really horrible or difficult things. And
Yeah.
afterwards, and this is where it tied into the other episode that I was listening to today. Afterwards, there's this kind of I was thinking about the first episode and what I felt like when I would watch these movies, especially when I was younger, before I started dealing with being a survivor, before I had told anyone that I was a survivor, that's when I watched the most hardcore movies
Oh,
and
interesting.
really intense movies. And it was a form of release in some ways. And I think it relates to this. The episode today was about the dopamine fix and
Oh,
how dopamine is so addictive and how we get it through so many different ways. And nowadays it's so difficult to avoid
yeah.
getting dopamine fixes and how
Scrolling,
we get it through
scrolling.
so many ways. Yeah. And the dopamine effect is we have this homeostasis. There's this place in our brain that experiences pain and pleasure, and it's the same place in our brain. And it's always trying to get to this homeostasis, this balance
Yeah.
of level of pain and pleasure. They're kind of like on either end of the teeter-totter. And when we get our pleasure, that dopamine hit, the pain goes, the other end is tipped up, and then we have to suppress it with this pain, the unpleasant, the downer side of the teeter-totter, and how that balances our homeostasis, how it balances out things. But the more times we get our dopamine hits and the more dopamine we start needing more and more to get that hit, and it's like we keep swinging further and further each direction in
Interesting. That's almost like cutting, like you're doing
uh-huh
something to cause pain.
in order to have
Feel.
that feel. And
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking is like, I think after I was thinking about what it felt like to watch these movies and what was important to me back then, what did I get out of it? And I recognized that after the movie, there was kind of this feeling of relief and this rush of surviving something like the movie was the downer part of the teeter-totter, and going through the movie was bringing me this stress, and then after the movie I'd get this rush of the dopamine hits in a
Mm,
way, and you get this relief, this feeling like a release.
interesting.
And I was wondering if it's like, is this kind of the whole thing is not just understanding and, being aware and learning about this danger, but also getting a thrill out of the danger without experiencing danger. Getting a safe thrill from danger without experiencing anything that can hurt you. And
Huh.
I know that I also felt in a way like I'd been through something after I saw these movies and was stronger because of it in a way, or more able to handle things. It's like it toughened me up to
Mm,
go through it, which I think as a survivor, I was thinking I needed to build up my defenses, and this kind of helped me build up my defenses.
interesting. Don't you love it when something you just think you're weird about, then you find out it's like, I'm normal.
Well, there's a reason for it. And I think that helped a lot because, and they talked about in this episode how we consider that horror movie and that kind of stuff is really unpleasant. It's not something we should look as something that's good.
Yeah.
And you look at people that are into them and kind of question their morality in a way. Like, what's wrong with them?
Yeah.
And I always felt that way about these movies that I liked in a way.
Like,
Like,
what's wrong with me?
yeah, why is it I'm getting this thrill even though, and I rewatch some of these movies and I know them, but I still get that hit, that rush of experiencing something and getting through it and surviving it. And it's like this
Interesting.
vicarious buzz of going through danger.
Wow. That's really interesting. I love Hidden Brain, and I love that they uncover these kind of things.
Hmm.
Because I think again that's that validation when you feel like, oh, other people, oh, this is a thing. Like it's not just me. I'm not a big fat weirdo.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know how helpful it is to even understand this other than it makes me feel less ashamed and less like this is something I need to hide because I feel second class because I like this trash, it's funny
Oh,
and that's how it helped me was feeling like okay, there's something wrong with me because I like these movies. What is it? And then realizing no, it's not necessarily something wrong. There's this thing that's happening and once I understand, it's funny because I didn't need that kind of stuff as much after I started dealing with being a survivor and going through therapy and so forth. And even nowadays, especially, I don't need it as much, but I still do like it at times. I still go to those war movies. And, when Charnel's not around, I'll watch those movies that I know she doesn't like because she doesn't like any of them. And there's still something there that helps me out sometimes, gets me through feelings of needing to feel stronger or something. And I think that's how those murder or those true crime podcasts are helpful, is you feel like you're witnessing something bad, but in a way you're witnessing it from the side of justice happening. I think in a lot of them they talk about it, but they also talk about who they caught and how they were prosecuted and so forth and how
well,
they
and there was,
proved it.
yeah, there was one true crime that your brother-in-law Steve and I had a personal attachment to. And it was so weird because I knew one of the people that was in the story, just kind of a fleeting character, but your brother-in-law knew like the guy and he ended up in prison. And there is something that is the word that's coming to me, and I don't know if this is right, is connecting. Like there's
Mm,
some sort of like I knew them. And I think for me, like having trauma, like what we come from this place of who would ever believe me? And then we watch these crazy things that happen and we go, it really does happen. So
yeah.
maybe someone would believe my story.
Yeah, maybe my story isn't so crazy after all.
Yeah.
In a way, it's kind of comforting, but it's comforting in kind of a twisted manner in that, my life was messed up, but I'm not the only one.
I know. It's like we're sick and we're sick. And that's honestly like a good thing because we can all relate. And,
Hmm.
I know when we talk about sharing our story, it's like it's so sad. It's so sad when people have stories of childhood trauma.
Yeah,
But also, it's like the me too,
yeah,
that feeling of I get you, I understand you.
yeah.
And it is interesting. And I think just the fact that I love that you listen to Hidden Brain because that, and we also love Wait,
Yeah.
which laughter is good too. So think about that. You listen to the Hidden Brain, the mystery, that yeah, and but then we love to laugh, and we love
Yeah.
that. Wait, don't tell me that makes us laugh, and I do think in healing, like for instance, for me with Dexter, I
Yeah.
know Dexter. That's the
Hmm.
person in my life. I know that person.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that's a very intriguing how well he plays that person
Yeah.
that I know.
He
And
makes it so believable because he's someone that he seems so ordinary.
I know.
He seems
And I
so relatable in a lot of ways. And
Yeah,
then,
I recently read a book about a woman who is a sociopath. So she a psychopath. So psychopaths are born, sociopaths become.
hmm,
So you could be born a psychopath or you could become a sociopath, but they're kind of their I don't want to say symptoms, but they behave similar.
yeah.
But what I loved about what she said is she was never a murderer. She never wanted to kill anybody. Well, she did, but she didn't do it. But we all think that, once in a while. But what I thought was this is what she said that has just been resonating in my mind. She said, I think often empaths, people who are empathic,
Hmm.
do more damage than people who are psychopaths.
Hmm.
because they try to help in a way that enables.
Mm.
Where a psychopath, she's a lawyer. She's a lawyer. And she goes, I don't have to sit and wonder and have feelings. I just go, no, what they did was wrong. And I'm going to convict them, or I'm going to support them, or whatever. And I thought, isn't that interesting? And she also said this, Kevin. She said, I never have guilt or shame. I don't understand all these people that are suffering from guilt and shame. I don't have it. And I thought, maybe I'd like to be a psychopath. Isn't that
I don't
interesting?
know. That's
Yeah. And
strange.
so one thing she knows is, she knows as somebody who makes a lot of money, she has to give back to her community. Like, she knows that. She doesn't feel it. So
Hmm.
she gives back to her community in a big way, a lot of money. And people that know her say, well, you're not doing it because you feel it. You're doing it because you know it's the right thing to do. So maybe it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So isn't it interesting? I think of someone who struggles so much with guilt and shame and toxic shame. And then to have somebody who's done really bad things, like we've all done bad things. We've sped, maybe we've drank too much and drive. Like, we've done things and we suffer for it. She's done some of those things, but she doesn't suffer for it because she didn't
Yeah.
get
Yeah. She doesn't have
caught.
remorse.
Right, but she hasn't killed anyone or done anything that would put her in jail, but she was diagnosed as a psychopath, which is born. And it just really caused me to think a lot. And she didn't reveal who she was, but she said, "If you really want to know who I am, write me a letter and I'll tell you who I am."
Huh.
Because she has to protect herself
Yeah.
from judgment. And I think about when you had the people in the bathroom that were remodeling, and you were worried about judgment because they
Hmm.
knew you did this podcast.
Yeah. Well, and that is, I think some of that is relatable as far as not wanting to have shame or guilt. But without shame or guilt, I think we lose all empathy because
That's a good point, because she
if you,
doesn't have empathy at all.
yeah, you don't understand what others
Right.
are feeling.
She's learned it, and that's why she's a lawyer. She's learned, oh, kind of like autistic people kind of have to go, oh, I'm supposed to say hi. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
They have
supposed
to
to,
learn
right.
learn how to relate. And I think it's, for me, it's a valuable gift to have empathy, to relate to people, to understand and feel what they're feeling. And it's also really hard sometimes, especially when we do interviews and
Oh,
people are talking about the things they went through. But
hmm,
I wouldn't trade that for not having,
hmm.
because how do you relate to someone if you can't? And I think that's the thing with this people who are psychopaths or sociopaths, is they don't relate to people. They don't
No.
relate to anyone else. And
Mm.
and I think that's the most important thing in
Well,
any situation, is to be able to relate to someone.
yeah, and one of the things she said was men, sociopaths or psychopaths and sociopaths, but men tend to kill because they have all that man stuff and that man anger, where women are more nurturing. So women psychopaths don't necessarily go to that place of rage and anger. But when we think about abusers, I believe the men that abuse, most of them are either psychopaths or sociopaths, unless they do it in their youth and they just don't know better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've heard stories where they go, oh, I didn't think they'd remember. They were just a little kid. But when it's an adult doing this, would you agree with that? I was just
Yeah.
trying to,
Well, yeah,
I
there,
think they are one
I
or the
think,
other.
and it's hard to understand, the difference between pedophiles and someone who's just acting out. The problem is, the impact is often the same. Maybe someone was acting out and
Yeah,
that wasn't their thing, and maybe that was their thing and they really are pedophiles. And if they're pedophiles, does that mean they're sexually deviant, or like you're saying, are they sociopaths or
right.
psychopaths? They just don't experience empathy, so they just want to get their thrills and they don't
Mhm.
regard how that affects anyone. And
Which is interesting because that kind of brings up addiction
mhm.
versus just not caring. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think with sexual abuse, it is a form of addiction. The perpetrator is addicted to something they know is wrong, but
Yeah.
they don't want to or they can't stop it.
Yeah.
And so this always back to this fascination with horror is I recognize that I'm in a lot of ways. For me, it was a way of understanding, and also it was a familiarity.
Oh,
This
that's
is gonna be
interesting.
weird, but
No, yeah.
there's a really disturbing movie I saw, and I talked about with someone afterwards, and I said, I get it because I've been through that. That isn't unfamiliar. And
Mm,
so I kind of was like, it's relatable to me. And so experiencing it in a safe way in a theater
mm,
was basically a way of surviving it without having to go through it.
interesting.
And so that's why, and I do think there's that feeling afterwards of kind of a euphoria almost or release or
Interesting.
relief. And I think that's kind of has something to do with the dopamine effect. I think after you go through this traumatic thing and you survived it and you're okay and you know you're okay and you know that nothing happened to you,
Mm.
you're just a bystander to this traumatic thing. There's this
Oh,
euphoria, and I think
that's,
that's kind of a dopamine hit. And I
yeah,
wonder for me if that's one
interesting.
of the reasons why I would go and deal with this so much. Nowadays, I don't do it as much, and I don't have that kind of feeling so much after movies.
Hmm.
I don't watch a lot of the real extreme horror movies anymore. I don't need that, it feels like. And the ones I do kind of watch are the war movies or, stressful, but not necessarily horror or graphic. And
Interesting.
I think it's because I've gotten to a place in my life where I don't need that relief so much.
So let me see if I'm hearing this right. So at the place you're at in your life now, you don't really watch those movies as much as you did back before you started into being a survivor, being in recovery and understanding. It's like it's kind of lessened
Yeah,
since you've been getting better.
yeah, definitely.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's one of the
Wow.
things I got out of this show, this episode from Hidden Brain was I looked at and I recognized, wow, there was kind of a time where it was a lot more prevalent in my life.
Interesting.
And then as I got healing, got through stuff, started learning about stuff, it lessened and lessened and lessened. And nowadays it's not nearly as prevalent, although it's still a part. I still watch war movies and still watch violent stuff. I'm not as drawn to it as I was.
Interesting.
And the real extreme movies that I used to watch, I'm not really into them so much anymore. It's funny because I do go back and revisit them once in a while, and afterwards I don't feel that same rush. It doesn't feel the same. It's not as it. I don't have that good feeling in a way. It's like it's more of a, okay, that's done. Yeah, it's funny.
It's interesting because what it's making me think of is when I was growing up, of course, I was living in a very traumatic family, very toxic. And do you remember when was it called The Love Story with the football player
Hmm.
came out? And I watched that movie and I think I cried for weeks. And it wasn't the story, it wasn't the cancer, it was, I had never had permission to cry about anything in my life because I thought it was normal. And I remember thinking, is this normal to be so upset by a movie? And when I think back on it, I wonder if it's that same sort of thing. It gave me this feeling of release as I got to cry because I did not cry as a child. And my mom would get so mad at me. I remember when I was learning to drive and I was going 50 miles an hour down a road because that was the speed limit, and a squirrel ran out in front of me. And I tried to brake, but I didn't want to kill my passengers. And I hit the squirrel, and she called me a murderer.
Oh,
And then she was mad at me because I didn't cry that I killed the squirrel. And I never knew if it was because I didn't cry or I didn't feel bad or if I was some sort of monster.
Yeah. Mm.
That was big.
I
And it's
remember it.
funny
Yeah.
because my sister was in the back seat and she's always remembered that, because
Really.
and I'm a traffic reporter, and I will tell you, hit the cat, hit the duck, hit the
Mm.
goose. If you're on the freeway, you don't slam on your brakes and have everyone behind you hit you to protect an animal.
Yeah. Yeah. I.
But it was that whole thing of the mental illness and her
Uh-huh.
reflection of me and that I didn't cry. And so I thought that movie, I always wondered if that was like this big way for me to let go and to cry because I'd never been allowed,
Huh. Yeah. Yeah. So that was your vicarious release.
Yeah. Interesting. Isn't it funny as we delve into this, the things that,
Yeah, it is. And it's weird what I always felt ashamed of
yeah,
and
because
didn't
you've
like.
talked about that
Hmm. And
before.
yet it makes sense. And that's why this was so important to me was it made sense. It wasn't that I think horror movies are a great way to deal with trauma. I don't know that they help that much at all. They
Yeah,
might have. And actually, they probably
maybe.
did.
Yeah.
Well, it was one way of coping.
Well, when you
When
think
many,
about your subconscious, like before you really were telling anyone, it was probably a way to get
yeah.
relief or satisfaction of I'm not alone. I'm not the only one this ever happened to.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things that could have been helping me that I had no idea
Hmm.
but at the time
Yeah.
I was feeling guilty about it and ashamed of getting this thrill out of these movies. And so listening to this podcast talking about why people do it, it made me feel like, oh, that makes total sense.
Okay,
I,
so Kevin, there were these books. I don't know if I can remember, and they were by a Swedish author. And after he wrote his third one, he passed away, so then they had to
uh,
improvise. But they were very dark, and then they made them into movies. And I loved the book. I loved the movie, and I told my daughter, "Oh, you've got like the girl with something tattoo."
yeah,
You heard
okay,
it?
I know those books. I
Okay,
I actually read the first one, yeah.
okay, so I loved them, and I'm not gonna lie, I loved them. And so when I told my daughter the movie came out, what my son-in-law said to her is, "What the hell is wrong with your mom?"
They
And I
aren't
never
easy.
ever recommended a movie after that.
Oh yeah. Well, there's very disturbing
Oh,
stuff that happens in them. I mean,
yes.
hardcore. I had a hard time to
Mhm.
tell you the truth reading the book, but that's I think because I'm in, maybe 30, 40 years ago before I started,
Yeah.
it would have been the book I would have loved
Well,
because
and
it
it
would have
came
had
out,
that, but it had this real hard stuff
yeah.
in it.
And it was maybe 20 years ago now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of on the verge when we were starting to get well.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I don't think I read it until it wasn't right when it came out. It
Oh,
was,
I read it right when it came out.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think I read it after the movie came out.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so at that point, that wasn't as appealing to me. And I still
Interesting.
read it, but I had a hard time through the real hard stuff.
Well, the movie was a little harder than the book,
Oof.
I think. Yeah.
But see, that would have been something that would have
Yeah, but
given
that's that
me.
thing where you go, what's wrong with me? When my son-in-law, who I love and he loves me, he's like, what is wrong with your mom? Well, he had no idea.
Yeah.
They had no idea about my trauma.
Yeah. And so I think more than anything, just this helped me not feel bad about
Yeah.
why I watch this stuff. And it's not like it's wrong to be enjoying something that seems traumatic because I think we're learning from them. And I think that's something that I did back then was I was learning from trauma by re-experiencing it in a safe way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Because so there's that side, which I think when we look at it that way, we can have grace. When we look at it the other side, it's like, why would people even put this kind of thing out? Well,
Yeah.
and it's one thing if it's truth, if it's based on a true story, or if it's manifested, but still, it's kind of like it says I think it says to our soul, you're not crazy.
Yeah.
But we feel crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
interesting. Wow.
you're not the only one that survived
Yeah.
messed up stuff.
Yeah.
And oftentimes in this story or
Mhm.
movie, you really relate to the survivor and you feel like they've been through it and they got through it and they survived
They
and
survived.
and so you feel emboldened by it or
Yeah.
helped by it. And I,
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it raises awareness because we always talk about this, how there's people that think this kind of stuff doesn't happen. I worked in this wonderful organization, and I remember one woman said, "Can you believe those Christians think there's evil?" I'm like, I don't care if you're Christian or
what?
not, there
How
is
could you
evil
not
in this world. And
believe
if
in
you don't
evil?
think that, oh my gosh.
How naive is that? But maybe
Yeah.
they were just intentionally blocking it out of there.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's a good point because maybe I remember this one lady who always would tell me, I really thought she had been traumatized. And she was actually your wife's neighbor way back in the day when I knew her before you, sorry. And
uh-huh.
she would always say, "Oh, I had the most wonderful childhood," but I don't think she did.
Hmm.
And I think, again, it's that denial that comes before we realize, oh my gosh,
Yeah, yeah, and I think denial is really unhealthy, especially if we
yeah.
deny not only what happened to us, but in order to do that, we have to deny
Yeah.
that anything does happen.
Right,
And
that it
so
could
that
happen to anyone.
that
Yeah.
kind of Pollyanna, everything's
Yeah.
wonderful
Yeah.
kind of attitude
Yeah.
isn't healthy in that
Mm-mm.
we can't handle if anything goes wrong.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oof.
That was deep.
I think I learned something about myself that made sense and helped me. And because of that, I was just like, wow, I'm not so messed up after all. And here I am, 65, and still thinking,
Uh-huh.
needing to learn, well, I wasn't so messed up. And it's funny because it was such a relief to
Wow.
think that maybe I wasn't such a sicko. There was something else going on.
And you know what that tells me? It tells me how we hold on to those things. Because, like, I look at you, and the first thing I would never think about you is that you are a freaking sicko. The first thing I think about you is you are the kindest, most loving, genuine human being. But isn't it interesting that what we put in our head about ourselves?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought I had this sicko
Mm.
side that I
Oh.
had to hide from people.
Mm.
And it's just, yeah, it's,
Yay, you're free. You don't have to hide it. We
well,
like horror. We like murder. We like true crime.
yeah, I mean,
To us.
it served a purpose and it still
Yeah.
does. And I think it's less harmful than I think we
Yeah.
label it. I think
Yeah.
we
What's
can
validation,
we
really?
can relate to it
Yeah.
differently than
Yeah.
labeling it just sick and messed up.
Right. I mean, I just did an interview with a lady that's a divorce coach. And so as I'm interviewing her, all the old stuff from my first divorce came up and all the
Mm,
guilt and shame. And I was in church and, it was like, it wasn't, you don't get divorced. Well, my husband was gay.
hmm.
Like, and he divorced me. And it was like, as I was listening to her, I was kind of re traumatized, thinking about I didn't have the support when I went through it. But then I was so grateful for what she does and how she supports women going through
Mm,
that. And it was like, I am so grateful. I'm sorry you went through that divorce, but honestly, I'm glad for the work you're doing. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So there might be a reason that re-experiencing trauma in a safe way
yeah,
is helpful.
yeah, imagine that.
And if it helps you relate to others,
Yeah.
oh, it's
Hmm.
almost profound.
I know. I feel like that's a mic drop. But as professionals, we would never drop a mic.
No, because that's a terrible thing to do
That's
to a
a
mic.
terrible thing to
Oh,
do.
and
I have
I
such an
love
issue
my
with the mic
mic.
drop.
I hate that. Every time someone does it, I just go, ah,
Oh, it
don't
hurts our
do
heart.
that.
It
Because
hurts our soul.
I have fond affection for my mic. I don't want it to ever get hurt.
Oh my my gosh, I love it. Well, I think this is a good place for us to stop and pray.
So that's it for today.
We are going to have a prayer time if you want to stick with us. If not, we believe in you.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories.
If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find us. And we really want to spread this message.
Father, I thank you for all your blessings and for your understanding of our lives, and that you have the grace and mercy to bless us even when we think we've done wrong, and to persist in our lives even when we're thinking we're doing bad things. I know often when I would watch those movies, I would feel like I was distancing myself from you, God, because I was, in a way, magnifying something that was bad. But Lord, I just pray that your understanding and grace, you get it, and you love us anyway. You love us the way we are, and you want us to understand that we are blessed by you, and you understand our sin. You understand our pain. You understand our hardships, and you understand that we are trying to learn lessons. Lord, I just pray that you would bless anyone listening, that they would feel your grace in their lives, that they would feel your mercy in their lives, and that you love them just the way they are and want to bless them. In your name I pray.
Father, I thank you that you love us, that you are a good, good God. And Lord, I think sometimes when we go through things, especially if we maybe are raised Christian and then we go through abuse as a Christian, it's harder to see maybe that you're a good God. And I pray that you will just help us to see glimpses of glory and to know that those are the things that hurt your heart, is when children are hurt. And I think in the Bible where it says, if you hurt a child, you may as well drown yourself. And that's how you care about kids. You don't want children hurt, Lord. And yet children get hurt because you are a God who loves us and gives us a free will, and that if we use it to your glory, then it's good, and if we use it for evil, then it's bad. And Lord, I just pray that you will help us to recognize your love and your grace, and that what you want for us always is good. In your son's holy name, amen.
Amen.